Andy, Barney, Opie, Goober, Floyd the Barber. That's some of the names from the Andy Griffith Show. Drop by Two Chairs No Waiting, the Andy Griffith Show fan podcast, and we'll visit with some of those folks, along with tribute artists and fans and just all kinds of things related to the Andy Griffith Show. I'm your host, Alan Newsom, and you can find the show, Two Chairs No Waiting, at twochairsnowaiting.com or
Howdy, partners. You're listening to Conversations with Jacob, hosted by my good friend, Jacob Waller. Make sure to check out the podcast where podcasts are available and check out the video version on YouTube. You can follow us on social media. Facebook is Conversations with Jacob. Twitter is at CWJ Podcast. And you can visit our website, conversationswithjacobpodcast.weebly.com. Hey, you got a show idea? Maybe a guest suggestion? Email us at conversationswithjacob@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Jacob Waller.
And what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Jacob. Today is episode number 60. It's episode number 67. After you've done so many of these, it's kind of hard to remember, kind of what episode that you left off on. But today's a good episode because we're talking paranormal and UFOs and much more. But before we get started, don't forget to check out our website, conversationswithjacobpodcast.weebly.com. You can find upcoming shows, past guests, and whatnot. Check out Two Chairs No Waiting. It's an Andy Griffith fan podcast hosted by my good friend, Mr. Adam Newsom, who appears in the movie Mayberry Man. You can check it out, twochairsnowaiting.com or on the YouTube. Also, if you like cars, check out the Rocky Mount, Virginia Cruise-In. The next event is July 6, 2024. And if you missed that one, check it out again on August 3rd, 2024, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Franklin County High School, the Lowe's parking lot, the Shields parking lot, and the Rocky Mountains Smokehouse. Joining me today is John Russell. He is a psychic, a paranormal investigator, a multi-award winning bestselling author. His books include 20 Ways, A Knock in the Attic, and Riding with Ghosts. He's also been heard on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie and much more. So please welcome Mr. John Russell to the podcast. John, how you doing?
Jacob, I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me today. I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to our talk.
Oh, absolutely. Now, for the people, well, I'll ask the first question. And how did this all start for you?
Well, it started when I was 5 years old, and I was sound asleep in my bed, and I woke up all of a sudden for no discernible reason. I was completely, totally wide awake, no drowsiness, no grogginess. I thought, well, this is really strange. And so my parents had left a nightlight on down the hallway so I could see if I had to get up at night and go to the bathroom or whatever. And I raised up on my elbows and I looked around the room and looked down the hallway. And in the nightlight's glow in one of the doorways in the hall, I could see this elderly black gentleman peering around the door at me. And I screamed bloody murder because my family's white. We didn't have anybody black living with us. And I presumed as a 5-year-old child that an intruder had entered the home. And when I screamed, before my parents could come running, before they could get there, when I screamed, he walked through the doorway and into the hall and started walking toward the bedroom, started walking toward me. And he was every bit as solid as you or I, Jacob. He wasn't translucent, wasn't transparent, wasn't misty. He was just as solid as you or I. And I knew he was elderly because he had close cropped white hair and he had a white mustache. And I can tell you to this day the clothes he had on. He had on a red plaid flannel shirt and he had khaki pants, a black belt, and black shoes. And as he got closer to my bedroom door and was almost in the bedroom, I screamed bloody murder again. And my parents finally, they come running. They finally made it in the bedroom, and he disappeared right before they got there. He started at his feet and began to get translucent, and then transparent, and then vanished, just completely gone. So my parents came in. My mother was holding me. What's the matter? What's the matter? And I said, there's somebody in this house. And she said, no, nobody's in here. I said, I just saw somebody in this house. There's somebody in this house. And she said, oh, you've had a nightmare of something you were watching on TV and it scared you, had a nightmare or whatever. And I said, no, this is not a nightmare. I'm wide awake. There's somebody in this house. And I was so convincing that my father actually walked through the house, checked all the doors and windows, looked in the closets, looked under the beds. And of course, there was nobody there in the flesh. And then it dawned on me, I had just seen my first ghost. And it was like, why did he come? What did he want? Was he going to come back? Was he going to want to talk with me this time? Was he going to ask me to do something scary or whatever? So my parents are trying to get me settled down, get me back to sleep. And that's almost impossible, of course. So they leave the big light on and sit with me a while. And I finally get back to sleep. And I spent the next few weeks of my life looking over my shoulder all the time and having a hard time going to sleep. So when is this ghost going to come back, Or if he came, there could be others. There could be more on the way. So a few weeks later, after this had happened, these paranormal manifestations began to occur in my life. And these were physical manifestations, things that actually occurred on the physical realm. They occurred in our house. My parents witnessed them. Sometimes they occurred at school and the other kids witnessed them. And as this began to occur, now being, a little over 5 years old, I couldn't articulate this. I couldn't express it, but somehow intuitively, I understood that the old black man, the old black ghost, had come to open up the portal to these experiences, and that was why I was having them. And I also intuitively understood that these experiences were going to be extremely important, not only to me, but to other people someday, that they were going to have value, they were going to have meaning, and these weren't occurring just willy-nilly out of the blue. There was some importance attached to this. So I began to understand that. And then as these experiences continued, and I got closer to a little closer to 6 years old, I was standing out in the backyard, goofing around with a toy, playing with a toy, and this car pulled in the driveway, people that I didn't know. And I ran the house, got my mom and dad, and I said, there's somebody just pulling the driveway. I don't know who it is. So, okay, we'll come look. So they came out and said, oh, these are friends of ours. Well, I had never met the people. I didn't know them. I didn't know who they were. So they got out of the car and were standing on the sidewalk talking with my mom and dad, just making small talk before they all went in the house. And I walked up and stood there looking up at them. And I said, you folks have just been on vacation. And I said, you drove that car that's in the driveway and you've got 2 kids. They're not with you today, but you have 2 kids and you took them with you on the vacation and you stayed at this hotel that had this many stories to it, this many floors, and it was painted this color. It looked like this. There were these trees out front spaced at regular intervals and they looked like this. And then in the back was the pool area and it was painted this color and this is how the furniture was arranged and everything. Well, the woman's husband was kind of looking at her and my parents and me kind of like, what's going on? She was looking at me like I had cobras coming out of my ears. And she was just literally bug-eyed. Her mouth was agape. And she looked at my parents and she said, how the hell could he possibly know this? And my parents were all taken aback and didn't know what to say. And my mother said, well, kids and their imaginations. And she said, no, this is not kids and their imaginations. How the hell could he possibly know this? And my parents were kind of like, well, what do you mean? She was like, that was what we came to tell you today, was about the vacation we just took. And we drove that car. We took our 2 kids and we stayed in this hotel that looked exactly like John described. How the hell is that possible? How the hell could he possibly know this? And my mother was like, John, go play. And I was like, okay, nice to meet you people. And it scared them so bad they never came back and visited my parents again.
Now, did you start having this psychic experience after you experienced that ghost in your house?
Yeah. So he came. I understood that he came to open up the portal to all this, that he came to awaken my psychic gift. That was kind of an outgrowth of these paranormal manifestations, these paranormal experiences that I began to have. And when I was able to see into those people's lives that way, Then my gift began to manifest where I could read people's thoughts. I could read their emotions. I could start reading their past, where they'd been, what they were doing now. And then I began to be able to accurately predict their futures, which really became interesting. So that's how that all began to develop. That all started at the age of 5 and 6.
Now, would you also had an UFO experience?
Yeah, a lot of UFO experiences, a lot of UFO experiences. But the main two we can talk about, I think when I was, by the time I was 18, I was doing psychic readings professionally. And by the time I had reached the age of 18, I had studied everything on the planet as far as religion, psychology, parapsychology. And I had done everything I could to improve my gift, to study things, find out what worked, what didn't, so on and so forth. And I continued to have these tremendous amounts of paranormal experiences. And other people witnessed them, other people saw them. So I was convinced of the reality of my psychic gift. I was convinced of the reality of the paranormal world. And one thing I did not believe in was UFOs. Now, in spite of having all these psychic experiences, and in spite of having this gift, I just didn't believe in UFOs. I read the magazines, read the books, saw people on TV talking about their experiences, and I was like, nope, not having any of it. Don't believe in it. Just not buying it. So I'm about 20, somewhere around 20 years of age, and I had been to this place. I had parked my car in a small parking lot, an open parking lot, and where I was at was across a narrow 2-lane street. So at the building I was at, when I came out, I could look across the street and see my car in the parking lot. So it was that close. The parking lot was open, wasn't full of a lot of cars or anything. So it was about 4 p.m, and I came out of the building, and this is back in West Texas where I grew up. So the weather there is horrific. There's tornadoes and there's all kinds of thunderstorms and baseball size hail and larger and all this. So I'm familiar with all that. I've lived through all of that, survived all of that. So I come out the door of this building, and I'm going to head over to the parking lot to my car. And this blast of wind hits me in the face as soon as I come out the building. I was like, oh boy. And I looked up and it's overcast. And I'm like, okay, we're fixing to get a storm. So I better run for the car. So I started to run for the car, and I look across the street into the parking lot, and down in the parking lot by my car, attached to the clouds above, is this cloud that's like a column that comes down like this and is sitting in the parking lot by my car. So I'm looking at this, and it's like, okay, it's not a tornado and it's not a dust devil. What the hell is this thing? I don't know what it is. And as I'm looking at it, there's these globules, these orbs about the size of a soccer ball, maybe a basketball, that start to exude and come forth out of this cloud and then withdraw back into it. So they don't completely escape it. They just kind of push out of the surface to where you can see them and then go back in. And all the way up and down the cloud, these orbs are doing that. They're these phosphorescent, fluorescent colors that are like red and yellow and blue and green and orange. And I'm looking at this thinking, what in God's name is this? And down around the base of the cloud, where it's kind of swirling and moving around, there's debris in the parking lot, like papers and squished paper cups and things like that, which should be moving, being blown around by this cloud that's moving around, all this activity in it. And all that debris is perfectly still. It's not moving at all. There's no movement to it. So I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I couldn't figure it out. So I get this odd, strange urge to walk toward the cloud. So I take some steps toward the cloud, and the cloud advances toward me in the parking lot, Jacob. I stop and it stops. I back up and it backs up. I do that a few more times with the same results. And I think, oh God, this thing is somehow sentient. It knows what I'm doing. It's responded to me. What do I do now? So I'm standing back up against the door, against the building, and the door opens, whacks me in the back, and a buddy of mine's come out. And he's like, oh, man, I'm sorry. He said, what are you doing standing so close to the door anyways? And he doesn't even wait for me to answer. And he looks up the clouds and goes, oh, boy, it looks like we're in for it. And then he looks across the street to the parking lot, and he goes, what in the world is that? I'm like, okay, thank God. He sees it too. I know I'm not nuts. And I said, watch this. And I walk toward the cloud, and it comes toward me. I stop, and it stops. I back up, and it backs up. So I do that a few times. I said, isn't that the weirdest thing you've ever seen? He looks at me like I'm the weirdest thing he's ever seen. He's like, bye. He's out of there. He's gone. It scares the life out of him. He runs. His car is parked the other way. So I'm like, okay, what do I do now? I'm stuck here with this thing that I know is real. Somebody else has seen it. It interacts with me in this weird way. What do I do? And about this time, it sucks back up into the clouds above. The clouds start to move over rapidly. And I'm like, okay, I run for my car, get in. I'm like, what in God's name was that? So I get out, and this is my hometown. I know all the streets like the back of my hand, still do to this day. And as I'm driving, it starts to rain. Now in Texas, it can rain hard enough. In 20 minutes time, it'll flood your lawn or flood an underpass. You know, I mean, it will come down. So I'm used to that. But this rain is like unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. You have to picture being in your car, the headlights on, the wipers on full blast, and your visibility is about a foot beyond your hood. That's it. That's as far as you can see. There's cars angle parked on the side of the street, and you can't see them. So I'm starting to panic because this rain is increasing in intensity, and that's all the visibility I've got. And I'm like, I'm going to hit somebody. Somebody's going to hit me. I'm going to run into these angle park cars that I can't see. I didn't know what the heck to do. The wipers are doing no good. The lights are doing no good. Like I say, I can see about a foot beyond the hood of my car. Can't see the cars out my side window that are angle parked there that are that close. So I almost hit this car in front of me. This car behind me almost hits me. And they had stopped for the stoplight. And the only way I knew it was a stoplight, I looked up in this rain and this darkness, and there was this little bitty, teeny tiny pinprick of red light about this big. And I was like, oh my God, that's the stoplight. That's how hard the rain's coming down. That's how the stoplight looked. So it changed, and I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? And this car turned on the street that I wanted to turn on. There was a Sears building there at the time. And in the back, they had a big parking lot and an automotive center. And I thought, if I can just make it into that parking lot, if I can just see that entrance, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to jump out. I don't care if I get soaked. I'm going to go in Sears, go down to the basement to the sporting goods, and just look at the sporting goods till the storm passes and it's safe to drive again. I can't drive this way. So I'm poking along, trying to keep from hitting the people in front of me, and the people behind me are trying to keep from hitting me. And I'm holding on. I've got a bench seat in my car, and I'm holding on to the wheel, and I'm leaning over to the passenger window, trying to look out and see the cars that are angle parked so that I don't scrape them. And imagine the rain coming down that hard and that visibility being virtually zero. And now it's gone. Everything's totally, completely clear. It doesn't slack off. It doesn't kind of drizzle, go away. It's just gone. The rain's totally gone. And I've got full visibility all down the street in front of me and back of me and all the way around me. There's not even a mist, not even a drizzle hitting the windshield. The rain has just vanished, coming down that hard 1 second and then literally vanished the next. So that freaks me out. But then what is even more freaky is the cars that are on the other lane coming our way are all of a sudden starting to swerve over and nearly hit the people in our lane, and people are honking their cars, their horns, and people are jumping out of their car doors and yelling and pointing up at the sky, and people are rolling down their windows and pointing out their cars up at the sky. And I'm like, what in God's name? And I look where they're pointing, and I had got up close enough to the entrance of the parking lot, and I could see the Sears building over there. And about 30 feet over the top of the rear of the Sears building, there's this silver metallic disc about 30 to 50 feet in diameter, just hovering over the Sears building there. No flame, no smoke, no noise, no sound, just sitting there perfectly still, hovering over the Sears building. I'm like, oh my God. And that's what everybody was pointing at. And I mean, this is a daylight sighting. This is like 4 p.m, you know, even though it's overcast, you got plenty of visibility. And I literally did a cartoon eye rub. I couldn't believe my eyes. And I look back up, and yeah, it's there. So I reached for my door handle. I wanted to get out and get a better look. And about that time, the craft just barely perceptibly made a little small movement toward us. And when it did, the clouds came from behind it, covered it over, and instantly the rain was back in full force again. Didn't start up again. It was just instantly there again.
Do you think, have these UFOs, that they cause weather like this?
I think that was part of the phenomena. The weather phenomenon was related to the UFO, and I think somehow the cloud, that weird paranormal cloud, had something to do with it, because a lot of people, when they report UFO activity, a lot of times will report paranormal occurrences occurring with the activity. So I'm sure that was all part of it. Yeah.
And where do you think these objects come from? Do you think they're beyond something that we can't see, or do you think? What is your opinion on it?
You know, I'm convinced they're physical objects, and our government said that when they released the UFO report. They said, yeah, they're physical objects. We pick them up on all these sensors. And the government said they're not ours, they're not theirs, we don't know what they are. And I believe the government does know what they are. But I think these government or extraterrestrial craft. I think the government knows that. I think the craft are extraterrestrial. I do not know whose they are, why they're here, or what their purpose is. And I don't know anyone. I know a lot of very famous people, a lot of well-known people in the ufology circles, and I don't know anyone that is a serious researcher and a credible researcher that will tell you that they know who and what they are. They'll tell you they don't. I talked with Kathleen Marden, who's one of the most foremost ufologists we have in the field, one of the most respected people there are. And she wrote books with Stanton Friedman and researched UFOs with him, and so on and so forth. And I asked Kathleen when we were talking, I said, Kathleen, do you have any idea, with all the research you and Stanton did and everything you've done since, all the people you've talked to worldwide, do you have any idea where these things come from, who's piloting them, what they want, what their focus or purpose is? She said, no. And she said, we just don't know. She said, we have a good account that they're more than likely extraterrestrial, that there are several different species or races, or however you want to term it. But as far as motivation, as far as purpose, we're not completely sure. We just don't have a definitive answer.
And why do you think that only certain people see these UFOs and other people don't? Do you think that they want a certain person to see it, or?
Well, you know, I think that as time's gone by, Jacob, I think that more and more people have acknowledged that they have seen UFOs. And I think that it's more widespread. These sightings, I think, are more widespread than what people are aware of or what they acknowledge. And a lot of it has to do with there's still a stigma to reporting that you've seen a UFO or encountered an alien being or been abducted. People are still going to make fun of you. They're still going to make light of you. And a lot of people are reluctant to talk about it. And there have been some people that it's come out recently that they had a sighting or an abduction or an encounter with an ET when they were maybe 5 or 6 or 15 or 20 or whatever. And they never told anyone. And now they're 50 or they're 60 or whatever, and they're coming out and they're telling their story because people are a little more accepting now than they were back then. But I think that the reality is that a lot more people have had sightings and abduction experiences, visitations, than we're aware of. I think a lot of people have had them.
Now, switching back to the paranormal, and have you ever encountered anything evil?
You know, I haven't, Jacob. I started doing paranormal investigations when I was about 11, and I've done hundreds of them, and I've had all these paranormal manifestations I've experienced. I have not experienced anything evil, malevolent, demonic, satanic, anything like that. My experiences with the other side, with the paranormal, have been overwhelmingly positive. I've had my life literally saved many times because I heeded the advice, the warnings, whatever that the other side gave me. I've been blessed in my life because of it. And when I've gone to investigate some of these claims that people make, that they've been scratched or bitten or threatened or hit or whatever, not saying this is every case, because I haven't explored every case out there, obviously, but in the vast majority that I have been asked to consult on or been asked to investigate or whatever, most of the time, I've been able to chalk it up to somebody that was involved in drug abuse. Maybe they were high at the time they thought they had this experience or encountered this particular manifestation. Sometimes there's mental illness involved. Sometimes there's alcohol use or alcoholism involved. And a lot of times there's just simply a knee-jerk reaction to what they're experiencing, a misinterpretation of what they've experienced. And that goes back usually to the way we're raised. We're taught that anything paranormal is either scary, demonic, satanic, malevolent, to be avoided, whatever. And again, that's not the case. But that's what we've been taught with our religion growing up. That's what we see on all those so-called ghost hunters on TV. They've got you convinced there's a demon behind every bush waiting to get you and so on and so forth. And that has not been my experience. And that's one of the things that I try and educate people on with my books, with my interviews and so on and so forth, is to get people to understand that, yeah, this realm can be very startling. If you're in your house by yourself and it's locked up, you know you're alone, you turn around, there's somebody standing there, that's going to startle you. And especially then if they vanish, okay, what's going on? So it can be startling, but that doesn't mean that there's anything there that's going to be harmful or hurtful to you or whatever. That's the assumption that we've been led to make. And I try and educate people, get them out of that assumption, get them to realize and understand that they can interact with the other side in these positive, beneficial ways.
Now, going back to the ghost hunting shows on TV, and how legit are those?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of them aren't. And I mean, there was here last year, there was one of the big names in one of those shows that got called out for falsifying evidence and for making things up and so on and so forth. I have it from the horse's mouth, from some of the on-air talent that I've known that have been in these shows, and from some of the production people I know that I've dealt with that have known other production people in those shows. And a lot of times they will ask the on-air talent to can you work up a cry here, or can you scream and run out of the room and all this type of thing. So they ask them to basically be an actor and to come up with these reactions to things that aren't even there sometimes. And a lot of times they will falsify things or make things appear to happen that don't. So when you're looking at these shows, you're not looking at the reality of how it is to really be a paranormal investigator or to have psychic or paranormal experiences. It's not a true representation at all.
Now, have you heard of the Spirit Box?
Oh, yeah, I use one. Yeah.
All right. So is that a good communication for the other side?
Well, it is, but the difficulty that we have in utilizing all these devices, Jacob, is that it's like when I shot a TV pilot for the History Channel, which unfortunately never aired, but I became friends with my producer and we're still friends to this day. And we were doing some things, trying to get me on some other shows and things. And he said, get some EVP. And let's post these so that we have something as an example to give people that this lends more credibility or more reality to this invisible realm. And I told him, I said, well, I said, for me to get EVP, I said, even with the very best technology and under the ideal conditions, even today, you may only get 2 or 3 words, or a very, very short phrase or whatever. And I said, as a psychic, when I go into these places, I communicate with these spirits real time in 2-way conversation and get complete information in complete sentences, complete paragraphs. The conversation may be 5 or 10 minutes that I conduct with these spirits. So for me to get EVP, that's a regression. That's going backward, And he says, yeah, but think of it this way. He said, if you're on a show and you're trying to tell people about this conversation that you're having with these spirits, they don't hear it. But if they can hear a spirit say something in response to a question you made or a statement you made, and they can hear that on the tape, then that's something they can hang their hat on. I said, oh, okay, well, that makes sense to me. But, our problem with using all these devices is it's a very primitive way still of communicating. And the preferred way, if you have a good psychic, a reputable psychic, a medium, is to have that person communicate directly with the spirits and then tell you, both sides of the conversation. I think in time, as technology gets better and as science begins to work with psychics and the paranormal, as we get past that division and that stigma, I think we'll get some really, really good results with this technology down the road. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. In spite of all our advancement, it's still kind of in its infancy.
Now, do you think that these apps on your phone that claim to communicate with ghosts,
Right.
do you think that those apps are legit, or do you just think it's just all for show?
Some of those work. I've utilized some of the apps and they work. You can get just as good results if you just use the recorder app on your cell phone and use that just like you would any other digital recorder, and you'll probably get just as good results with that. I prefer an external digital recorder with a ghost box if I'm trying to really get good, clear communication, good, clear sounds. But again, for me, that's more for other people than it is for me, because I know the reality of the spirit world, no spirit communication, so I don't need that validation. But some other people do. But it has been nice sometimes, because there was one time that this dear friend of mine, one of my best friends in the world, he passed away, and I was just heartbroken. And I didn't attempt to contact him on the other side for a couple of weeks. I'm like, okay, let him figure things out there, get settled in, let him have a chance to try and communicate with his family or whatever if he wants to. And so I was sitting there one day, and I was by myself in the house, and I was thinking about him, and I was just heartbroken. And I turned on the recorder on my phone, and I called out his name. I said, "Man, if you're here, talk to me, man. I miss you. Talk to me." And I let the recorder run, got quiet and let the recorder run. Then I got through and played it back. And I heard, "Hi, John." And it was definitely his voice. And I played it for his daughter, and she goes, "Oh my God, that's my dad. That's his voice." So, in cases like that, it's very comforting to get that feedback in that visceral way, that physical, tangible way that you might not otherwise have.
And what is your most memorable paranormal experience?
Oh man, there's been so many, but the one that really has stuck out in my mind all of these years, with all the experiences I've had. When I was a kid, we we went up in the. This is back in West Texas again, and the heat there in the summer is ridiculous. It's like sticking your head in a pizza oven and trying to breathe. It's hot. So the old car we had didn't have air conditioning, so you had to keep all the windows rolled down. The only time we rolled up the windows and locked the doors was when we was at home at night. Had the car in the driveway, didn't want anybody to break in, so you roll up the windows, lock the doors in. But otherwise, you kept the windows down all day. Otherwise, you couldn't get in the car and breathe. So we went up to visit friends of ours in the north part of town, and there were a lot of vacant lots in town back then, undeveloped lots, and they had cactus and scrub brush and mesquite trees and stuff. So this is in the midst of summer. Everything's hot and dry and dried out, and we're in one of our typical West Texas droughts. Hadn't had a lot of rain, and we parked facing in front of our friend's house, facing the wrong way on the street, facing this vacant lot. So we went inside and got our visit done, and we were coming out at the end of our visit, and it had gotten to the darkest stage of twilight where you just would need to turn your car headlights on to drive, but you could still see, a block or two. And we came out, and our friends watched us go down the sidewalk and get in the car, and we waved goodbye to them. They closed the door. Mom started up the car, and before we could drive off, there was this 5-pointed star, a pentagram, that was about the size of the side of a house, about that tall. And it looked like it was about a foot or two thick. It wasn't bulbous, it was flat. And literally a 5-pointed star, just like you used to draw in grade school when you're just making stars on your paper. It was a pentagram, but huge. It was yellow, and it glowed, and it fell like in super slow motion and kind of trailed this little yellow phosphorescent trail behind it that vanished as it fell. And it fell into that vacant lot across the street. And my mother was absolutely panicked. She was like, "John, get in the back seat, roll up the windows, lock the doors, roll up the windows, lock the doors." And I wanted to get out and go investigate. I wanted to go see what it was. And she was terrified. So I was rolling up the windows, locking the doors, and we watched it as it fell down into this vacant lot among the trees. And we stood there and watched it for a little bit, sat there in the car and watched it for a little bit. And she started to take off. And I said, "Mom, wait a minute." I said, "If this thing is somehow, if there's any fiery substance or whatever associated to it, won't it set the trees and stuff on fire in that vacant lot? And wouldn't our friends be in danger? And shouldn't we wait and see if the fire starts? We'd have to go back up their house, call the fire department on their phone." So she thinks, well, okay, there's some wisdom in that. So we sit there and watch it. And as we watch it, the glow from it just recedes into this little ball and just winks out. Nothing set on fire. It just vanishes. And man, she tore out of there like a bat out of hell. And I'm asking her all kinds of questions she can't answer. And that was one of the most phenomenal things I think I've ever seen. I never have really been able to figure out what it was or assign any meaning to it. My wife told me, she said, it means you're going to be a star someday. And I said, well, if that's true, it better hurry up, because there's, I turned 70 this month. There's not a lot of bricks left in the road. So if I'm going to be a star, it better hurry. But I think that was one of the most phenomenal things I've ever experienced.
Now, should we be afraid of ghosts?
No, the ghosts are either the spirits of our deceased loved ones, or they're, the spirit left behind of somebody that we don't know, or they can be a replay, kind of like a tape replaying in the atmosphere, where there's a manifestation that they want you to know that some particular event occurred, and they may act that out or replay the events of that time, but it's not necessarily an interaction with you. But, the ghost of someone, a spirit of someone, or some other type of spirit in the invisible realm that interacts with you, that's the more typical ghost, where you get that interaction, where you can ask questions, get answers, or where they give you information, or where they, point you toward a certain something that you need to find, or something like that. But there's no reason to be afraid. They're not going to hurt you. They're not going to harm you. The thing is that we're more apt to harm ourselves out of a fear reaction than anything else that's going to occur. And again, it goes back to being taught to fear these things and taught to, to have that fear reaction. But no, there's nothing there that's going to hurt you.
And what is your thoughts on poltergeist?
Well, that's just, I like the original definition, which is just noisy ghost. That basically comes from a German word that just means knocking spirit or noisy ghost. So it's nothing malevolent. It's just, and if you look at Webster's dictionary definition, which is the one I like, it simply just means a spirit that makes a lot of noise. And that's all it is. And if you think about spirit communication, the easiest way that they seem to be able to communicate with us is by making noise, knocking, rapping, moving something, slamming a door, so on and so forth. Occasionally you get that full-bodied apparition like I have, or you get those literal words in the atmosphere, like somebody's speaking and there's no one there, but you can literally hear the words with your physical ears. Sometimes you get that. But the easiest manifestation, for whatever reason, seems to be that they can make noise, or that they can make something make noise. So that's all it is. And
what is your opinion on the Ouija board?
Oh, there's a lot of controversy on that. I've used a Ouija board since I was 15 or 16 with no ill effects. I still use one to this day. In my latest book, I write a chapter in there on how to use the Ouija board. We've all been taught, I think people watch the Exorcist movie and they think that's the reality. That's the Ouija board. Oh my God, you're going to open up a portal to hell, or you're going to get a demon, or you're going to get an attachment. And that's not the case at all. And what's so funny, Jacob, you think about this, people with no hesitation will pick up a crystal ball and gaze into it, or they'll buy a tarot deck and use it, or they'll buy a pendulum and use it, or they'll buy dowsing rods and use it. But oh my God, don't touch a Ouija board, And the hilarious thing is, when you're doing any of that, you're using the same motive energy and the same motive force you are, regardless of what tool or technique you're using. And it's just always struck me so funny that, oh my God, the Ouija board, tool of the devil, but they'll pick up a pendulum or dowsing rods or crystal ball or tarot cards or any of another, number of things, and use those and not even worry about it. So it's funny.
Now, how legit are the tarot cards?
Oh, they're legit. They have an inherent power, and I've used them since I was, 12, 13, 14 years old. I got interested in the tarot and have used it ever since, still use it today. And I believe, and I write about this in my third book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities. I have lessons in there that teach you how to begin to learn the tarot, how to use a Ouija board, crystal ball, psychometry, all these things, all those are in the book. And I think that there are things that have an inherent power, an intrinsic power to them. And then we combine our power with that. And it's kind of like a tango, if you will. And we get these results. We learn how they speak and how they communicate with us. We learn how to interpret that. We learn how to utilize and manipulate that. And it's kind of like this two-way dance, like I say. And we learn to use these objects. And some things work better for certain people than others do. So that's why I always encourage everybody, find what you're attracted to and then work with that, practice that, use that, learn how to use it. And don't expect overnight results, and don't expect results that are going to be super phenomenal in 6 months or a year. You know, it takes a long time and dedication and practice to study these things and use these things to get good with them. You know, I've spent my entire life researching and practicing, dedicating my life to this, and I'm still studying, I'm still learning, I'm still trying to get better. I still work at it, and I still utilize it, you know, every day. It's kind of like any other muscle. You don't use it, you lose it. You know, you have to keep training it, and you can always get better.
Now, and what is one card a person shouldn't get?
Well, there's no card that you have to worry about. You know, where people always worry about the death card when it comes up. The death card usually means a literal or a figurative death. In other words, a passing away of a circumstance or an environment or a condition or whatever to clear the way for something better to come. So there's not really any evil cards with any specific evil connotations or anything you need to worry about. Again, that goes with experience. You buy a deck, you read the book, you say, okay, this is what it means, and you sit down. And if that's the limit of your interpretation, you can scare yourself or get yourself in trouble. You got to spend enough time with it to understand, okay, this card typically means this, but my intuition tells me that now this card means this, and it may be something diametrically opposed to the traditional or book meaning of that card. And that's when you know you're making progress.
Now, with you being a paranormal investigator and dealing with the spirits, are you afraid today?
I'm not looking forward to it. There was an old preacher I knew, and he was quoting an old quote that's been around forever. Said everybody wants to go to heaven, nobody wants to die to get there. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. That even though you believe in the continuance of life, you believe in life after death and life on the other side, and you believe in these spirit realms, you're not in any hurry to get there. And I'm not in any hurry to get there. And, we don't know exactly what it's like. No matter what anybody tells you, you can put all the information gathered from all of the research done all these years, and we can't definitively say, okay, this is exactly how it is. We've got bits and pieces and glimpses of it. And I think that gives people a little bit of uncertainty or a little trepidation. It's like, okay, well, I get an idea what I'm going into, but I don't know completely. So there's a little uncertainty there. But I think the fact that we can say, okay, we do live after our physical bodies die, and we do have family and guardian angels, spirit guides, whatever on the other side waiting on us. I think that should give some comfort to people and, take some of that fear of death away. And I think people don't fear crossing over to the other side. I think they fear the physical difficulties that they may have to go through to get there. I think that's the main thing.
Can you tell us about your 3 books?
Yes. The first book, Riding with Ghosts, Angels, and the Spirits of the Dead. These are all nonfiction. These are all true stories. These are all things that happened personally to me, what I learned from them, what I teach the reader. They're all entertaining. They're nonfiction, but they're entertaining. They're written in an entertaining manner. So you're going to have fun reading them. You're going to enjoy them. You're going to learn some things. You're going to get an entirely different view of the paranormal realm and what it means to be a psychic than what you've probably been taught so far. The first book, Riding with Ghosts, that centers, I've been a biker since I was 15, and that centers on my motorcycle rides and the paranormal experiences I begin to have. And I said, okay, I've got to write this down, and this is going to be my legacy. And after I finished that book, the second book, A Knock in the Attic, goes back to my childhood, to that experience, that awakening, and follows my life chronologically up through my life as how was it to be a psychic and to have these experiences as a kid, and then as a teenager, and then as a young man, and then growing on up and maturing and moving across the country and all the experiences I had, and it goes into the behind the scenes of the History Channel pilot that I shot and a lot of things like that. So there's a lot of good things in there that people are going to be interested in and enjoy. The third book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities, just like it says, there's 20 techniques in there. You don't have to know anything special. You don't have to buy expensive things. There's no hard to find herbs or tools or whatever that you have to find. Most of the things you can do with no cost and just what's in your own house or just by yourself. And I take you by the hand, lead you step by step how to learn these techniques, how to practice them, how to get good at them, and then the real world application of them. Now, all of these books are available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Apple Books. Anywhere you want to go online, get these, they're available.
Now, and what's next for John Russell? And what's next for you as an author and also as a psychic?
As a psychic, I still read. I've read for a worldwide clientele. I've read for clients in over 40 countries, which it blows my mind that I've been able to do that. That's been such a privilege. I still read. I don't have as busy a schedule as I did when I was younger, obviously, but I do still read. People can still contact me for readings. I do still take on new clients. And for that, they can go to johnrussell.net, and that's all about my psychic work. As far as the books go, I've finished a fourth book, and that's going to be coming out this year, hopefully around midsummer. And the title of that book is The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock. And those are more true paranormal experiences. There's a follow-up book to that titled The Cansack Ghost, which is more true paranormal experiences. That'll come out probably early 2025. And then I'm just still writing. There's still more books to come. So a lot more to come book-wise. So everybody stay tuned, check that out. And I do have an author website that if people are just interested in the books and want to read those, they can go to johnrussellauthor.com. So it's .net for the psychic, johnrussell.net, and then .com for the author, johnrussellauthor.com, and that's for the books.
All right. And how many books do you plan to write?
As many as I can get out. I'm just going to keep going. There's going to be people have asked me. They said, "Have you ever thought about writing a novel with paranormal overtones?" And I said, "Okay, finally, I've started one, and so I'm also writing on that. And it's going to be crime fiction with paranormal overtones. And then there will also be a follow-up book to 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities. So a lot more in the works, a lot more to come."
Absolutely. Now, for the people that's watching, do you get any closing thoughts for them that's tuning into this podcast?
Yeah, I appreciate everybody listening, first off. And I want everybody to realize, if they'll get these books and get into some common sense understanding of what the other realm, the other side is really like, and what the paranormal realm is really like, what it's really like to be a psychic. And if they will overcome their fear of the unknown and realize that, hey, this can be very, very beneficial and very helpful to us if we learn the proper ways to connect with it, communicate with it. And it's not through cursing and yelling and challenging and screaming at it. It's approaching it respectfully, understanding that we're interacting with spirits that have intellect, will, volition, emotion, just like we do, respecting and understanding that. And that's the message I would leave with everybody. And the people that have read my books and left me reviews, left me feedback, have said, "John, you've taken away my fear of this interaction. You've taken away my fear of ghosts. You've taken away my fear of the other side. And you've given me a peace and a certainty and a knowledge there that I can interact with this and that it's not something that's going to hurt me or something that's harmful to me." So that's the thing I'm happiest to leave.
Yeah. When this episode goes up, I will link your sites in the description below.
Great. Thank
so
you.
people
Thank
can
you.
check it out.
All right.
All right, John, which I appreciate you coming on to talk about the paranormal and the UFOs, which, of course, with me, the paranormal is a big topic for me.
Right.
And maybe we could do this in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Give me a holler anytime. And when I've got it on the schedule, I'll be happy to come back and talk with you again. Jacob, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on. And when it drops, give me a link, email me a link, and I'll promote it on all my social, and we'll get it out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, that wraps up on this week of Conversations with Jacob. Tune in next week for another interview. Until then, God bless, and we'll catch you in the next one.